Oh, it's actually on. Good morning, everyone. So, most of, if not all of you know that this past April, I spent a week down in Tucson, Arizona. And I went there as part of the Upper New York Annual Conference's Immigration Justice Task Force. And there was a small cohort of us who volunteered as part of the task force to learn more about immigration and what was actually happening at the southern border. I have to admit this, I didn't really understand the complexity of immigration in the southern border. And I certainly didn't understand some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. We start out here, you'll notice that I started out here with this idea that there is a biblical support for taking a more, what's the word I want to use, a more specific kind of support for individuals or acceptance for individuals who are coming to our borders. Matt, if you want to show this, the next one. Keep going. So here I have this idea. Immigration has gotten to be very politicized in our country today. And one of the things I did learn is that from the individuals who are living there is they don't see this as an immigration as a political necessarily issue. Much of the work, particularly work to protect migrants in the southern border, are actually being done by churches, and at least in the Tucson area. The religious organizations are actually doing much of the work to provide support for individuals who are coming across the border. So from a United Methodist standpoint, this idea of immigration is really a theological as well as a spiritual matter. That the next one, Matt. It is clearly stated in the social principles in the United Methodist Church that, and I'm not going to read it because everybody here can read, but it's clearly stated in our social principles that we oppose all laws that criminalize or oppress individuals who are coming to America as migrants, refugees, or immigrants. So, can we go to the next one, Matt? Thank you. We're going to start out with a song. Everybody, I'm sure, knows this song. So why did I select it? I selected this song because it has an interesting history. There are two kinds of veins of it. One of those is that it was a rowing song for boat people in the South. The other history of it is that it is a song that was sung by enslaved people as they escaped slavery in the South. So if you look at this, as we sing this, I've played with the words a little bit that I thought might be a little more appropriate for our conversation or my presentation today. So Antonella, if you could start out. to hear myself sing because that's really unfortunate. So if you all will join me in an opening prayer. God of all nations, who unites all through Christ Jesus, we come today asking you to help us to remember and honor all those who have fled their homes in the hope of safety elsewhere. For the mothers who have not had the only and mourn their past. For the fathers who are unable to rest, for their lives that benefit them, their loved ones. And for the children, daughters, and why they wasn't in the first place. Keep going, Lord. Lord, I ask you for their protection, provision, and passage. Remind us that there is no us or them, because when one part of the body suffers, all members are affected. Lead us into deeper awareness of our neighbors as our southern border, and call us to greater action rooted in the sacrificial love of the Son, Jesus Christ, who didn't just lay down his life for some, but for all out of your great love for us. It is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Can I have a couple of people who are willing to do the offering for us? I was invited by by a person that I work with on the Commission on Race and Religion or Religion and Race, I can never remember which one it is, at the conference. And she said, will you help me? I volunteered for this, and I tend to do a lot of the tech stuff for that group. So will you be willing to help me do that? And I said yes, because I thought that's all I would be doing. But what? Surprise. It turned out to be more involved than I ever anticipated, but the experience was, for me, important. And in some ways, life's changing because as I said earlier, I really didn't understand the complexity. I mean, we all see things that are occurring in the southern border on television, and we kind of get a sense that, this is what it's about. This is what's happening, and my experience down there was much more than that. So it all started last fall. And I'm not going to go through these other than to say that's what we started with. We started with this idea that we had to have some background knowledge before we could really appreciate the experience that we're going to have in Tucson. So, and most of these, we had to we had to get a background in immigration law that I thought would be enough, but when I got down there, I found there was more that I didn't understand or know about. This idea of trauma-informed spiritual care, or this idea that people experiences all kinds of traumas, and that impacts their emotional well-being, their psychological well-being, and how they experience and operate in the world around them. We learned about how to be an ally. What does that mean? Or how does that work? So they felt that we needed those kinds of backgrounds, experiences before we could go to Tucson and really get something out of that particular experience. So we arrived on Saturday, our intrepid crew, and I know you probably can't see quite as well, but there were five of us from Upper New York. One person is a pastor in Syracuse area. Another was laity from the North Country. Another person was laity from the Watertown area. no, she's a pastor from the Watertown area, and then myself and Georgia from this particular, from Western New York. So we made up that core team of going down there. And again, I thought, well, I'm just going to learn stuff. I didn't realize I was going to have to do stuff. Especially at the time of the day they wanted me to get up to do it. This is St. Francis in the Foothill Church. That's where we began we went to Sunday worship with them. It's just outside of Tucson. They're very involved with the migrant support and in the area. They served as our host, and they connected us with other organizations that were providing services in that to that group, providing assistance to that group. What I want to do to see if, oh, it does work. See these foothills, see these hills? Can you imagine sitting in service and looking out the window and you see this, and this window is huge. It's about the size of the doors here. It's huge to sit there and look out the window and that. I kind of lost track of what was being said because I was too busy kind of looking out the window. There's cacti. I actually I didn't put this slide together. I don't know why Georgia put cactus there, but she did. Other than they're everywhere. That is just something like this. So Monday morning we get up bright and early, and really bright and early, and we go out with a group called Humane Borders. And Humane Borders came into being in 2000. And what they do is they provide water barrels for people who are in the desert. I can see if, whoops. Come on, Charles. Come on. See this water barrel here? It's a 55-gallon drum. They fill with water. They have flags so that people who are trekking across the border during the day can see them. The flags are like 30 feet high, so they stick out and they're easily found. They also have lights on them for at night, so people can see where that particular water barrel is. Tucson is surrounded by mountains and desert. That's pretty much it. So these kinds of water stations are vital to people who are trekking across the desert. And I do mean desert. I mean, that's if you look at this here, that's all you see for miles and miles and miles and miles. There's a water barrel. They started out using gallon jugs. They moved to water barrels because they found them to be more efficient. Humane Borders takes care of them. They have a person whose job, basically he's an ex-Marine. He goes out and he hunts for trails, or he hunts for evidence that migrants might be moving through there. And that's how they decide where they're going to put their water barrel. And they check them every week. Water barrels are for anyone. Anyone, just not for migrants. Anybody who's out there and they're finding themselves running low on water can access one of the water barrels. They are, the barrels are, they have security on them. They have trail cameras on them now because barrels have been damaged by people. And so they keep those up. The other thing to remember, and I don't know, Karen, you might, because you're from that part of the world, everybody has water all the time. You don't go anywhere without having water. because if you do, you're subject to dehydration, which I experienced inadvertently and learned my lesson. So these barrels are out there. In fact, I helped put the flag up on this one. Next one. So there are three primary groups that provide assistance or provide support to individuals crossing the border. They are Humane Borders that I talked about first. They started about 2000. And they got started because of some changes in the way that people were coming to the United States and some decisions that have been made about how people are going to be allowed to come into the country. People got pushed away from normal, or people moved away from normal checkpoints or normal points of entry and started coming through the desert because it was getting more and more difficult to get legally to get into the country. What happened was there had always been deaths in the desert, people traversing undocumented or in manners that were not legal. But in around 2000, 2001, the number of deaths jumped precipitously from 7 to 10 times what they were before. And people in Tucson got alarmed. It wasn't so much that they were aligned politically, but people were dying in the desert. And they got alarmed about that. So Humane Borders started the process of coming together. It was sanctuary movement as well as the religious community got together and started working. How are we going to help prevent deaths? That was their main focus. As I said, they tend to use they use water barrels that they set in strategic places. Tucson Samaritans, I'm going to show you a little something about them in a few minutes. Another group that got me up at the crack of dawn to drive 40 or 50 miles. We went into the foothills. Tucson Samaritans does essentially the same thing. Support for individuals who are traversing the desert who may be short on food or water. We had to hike back. We hiked with them back into the foothills. No more deaths came later. These are individuals that go deep into the desert, or they go deep into the mountains in the area. They do a lot of the same thing: food, water. They do search and rescue. They do emergency first aid. They also do, No More Deaths also does body recovery. So if somebody identifies a body, it's not uncommon for their people to go out and to bring the body out, or bring the body out to a place where a helicopter can pick that individual up. This area here, this was in This was at Human Borders. This is stuff that they just picked up from the desert. Some of it is from body recovery sites. Some of it is just from where the water barrels or other kinds of things are at. What we were most intrigued with is, you see these black water, these are water bottles. These are gallon jugs. Coyotes help people, we've all heard about coyotes bringing people across the border. They charge for everything. So they charge for those black water bottles. So why would we have a black water bottle? Well, a lot of traveling happens at night. White might show up, so they require black water bottles, which makes this counterintuitive, because if you're running around the desert during the day, you got a black water bottle, you got hot water. But they showed us all kinds of things that have been picked up, wallets, belts, all kinds of things that have been left in the desert. The next day we went to U.S. criminal court. Well, this is incorrect. It's actually, I didn't write this, so I'm not going to take responsibility. It's actually immigration court. And we spent the next day in immigration court where we got to see how people who have been picked up, detained, go through the process of judicial adjudication. So we were there all morning, and we probably saw, I don't know, a couple hundred people come through the court that day. Most of them were first-time folks. First time you're picked up, it's a misdemeanor. After that, it becomes a felony according to the law. But I was shocked and most of the people we saw were male, but there were a significant number of females. And I was shocked. You know, they're in orange jumpsuits, and they bring them in from a detention center, and they may have spent in that detention center. They may have spent 2 to 14 days, or 3 weeks, just waiting for their hearing to come up. They get in. They talk to their lawyer for about 10, 15 minutes, maybe. They make their plea. They're shuffled back out again. And that goes on every day in that Tucson area. I was shocked by, why are they in shackles, in orange jumpsuits? They're back in the day, people, they come in, they spend a couple hours, and they move them out. But we have this whole system now that processes people. This is the one that struck me the most. All those red dots are the markings of the remains of individuals that have been found in the desert. As of last month, 4,500 people have been found. Remains of 4,500 people have been found in the desert in this particular area. They suspect that that's a small number, that the number is probably at least twice that many. The people who, the desert cleans itself. People crawl into holes or crawl into caves, and during the day they're trying to escape the heat, and they're never found. When we were out in one of the sites, we were walking, and I kind of had it's like, how does that work? We were out in a site, and we were walking in, we were trucking in some water and some food, and we were just, it was about a mile in. We walked in and saw nothing, just the site. We walked out, and there was a dead cow, literally 10 feet off the trail that we were in. We never saw it going into the when we were coming in. So I kind of walked away and said, I understand how people could be lost in the desert and people just not see them. So yes, this makes the most impact on me. This is the columbarium at the Pima County Medical Examiner's Office. What they do, and they treat this medical examiner treats the remains of people, or treats people with very high respect. They work very hard at trying to identify everybody that comes in to their facility. And when they can't, they have for lack of a better term, large refrigerators. They can only keep so many, and when they do, when they're forced to, they do cremate, but they keep identifying information as much as they can. They keep that information in categorized so that it can be easily pulled up, and their remains are kept here until they can be identified. So this individual's done yeoman's work at trying to add some dignity in death for people who may have been found in the desert. We're not going to do this because it didn't work, but in the Tucson area, there are 4 or 5 checkpoints where there are Border Patrol, mostly in Tucson area, it's mostly Border Patrol. Border Patrol has a jurisdiction out to 100 miles from the border. So it's mostly them, but can you imagine just driving to work, and there's a stop. You got to stop, and they may wave you through, or they may require you to prevent some form of identification. These are frequently around the Tucson area. We experienced them twice. This is one of the sites. This is the site that we went with the Samaritans, the Tucson Samaritans. We trucked the water in. Like I said, I didn't realize I was going to have to work. I thought, we were going to truck water. They said, we're going to take water. And I said, oh, okay. And then they put the bottles, the gallon jugs out, and they said, where's, I go like, oh, I got to carry this? So we took food and water out to two sites that day. This was Wednesday morning, and we took food and water out. They have the water and the food in these barrels. They have all kinds of non-perishables. They're just out there for people to take. They have the water bottles. These are gallon jugs because we can't carry 55-gallon barrels. But what I wanted you to see is this is a migrant trail through the foothills where we were at. Let's go to the next one. More migrant trails in the foothills outside. This is outside of Tucson. This is in the hills that we're at. Most migrants don't travel during the day because they're exposed. So can you imagine running these hills, these trails at night? If you're in the desert, they have this thing called, I got to move along. They have this thing called jumping cactus, that if you come in and Karen's going, yeah, I know what that is. If you come into contact with that thing, it immediately sticks to you, impales you, and they're very, very difficult to get out. And again, you're traveling, if you're in the desert, you're coming across at night. So you may not see that cactus or those cacti. So it's not uncommon for people to have injuries while they're trying to move across the desert or these foothills. This is a checkpoint. This checkpoint is one very similar to one we experienced in Aravaca, which was about 40 miles, I think it's about 40 miles southwest of Tucson. It's a very small city, I don't want to call it a city. It's not even much of a hamlet. It's like a crossroads. But in this situation, Aravaca, you have, how do I say this? You have like two roads, one coming in, 2 roads coming in and out. One of them goes into nowhere. It goes off into the desert. It goes no place. The other one, if you want to go any place, you want to go shopping, you want to pick up mail, you want to go to work, you want to go to school, anything like that, you have to go through that every day if it's open. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. You never know. And you never know who's going to man it. Maybe they know you, maybe they don't. So they've had all kinds of, particularly in Aravaca, they had all kinds of issues and all kinds of problems with the checkpoint. Yes? Mostly smuggling in. That was the idea is that we can catch up with them. They talked about this in very interesting terms. They called it the militarization of that particular area. Because you've got all these checkpoints, you've got a very large number of Border Patrol who are flying, they are in helicopters, they're on roads, they're on four-wheel drive or ATVs, they're on horseback, they're swarming, they're all over the place. You're not going to go far without seeing Border Patrol out there. This was a a protest. They wanted the checkpoint gone because there had been many problems with both people who were Latino and were citizens, as well as individuals who were white and citizens with Border Patrol. People got tired of having to tell people who they are, where they're going, where they came from. People Helping People was a grassroots organization that started in Aravaca. It started because people in Aravaca were finding people showing up at their doors who were thirsty, who were hungry, who were tired, who were sick, who were exhausted, and they even found a few people who were dead while people were out walking around in their community, out on the outskirts of their community. So they created People Helping People. They work with providing food, water. People in the community have bags, have knapsacks with food, water, socks, blankets. Well, one of the emergency blankets that they hand out to people who are, who they find who are migrants, who are in need of that. But I was struck by what their belief is. We insist that killing people is not a legitimate immigration policy. And for a lot of people, I discovered when I was there, that's how that's their belief. I talked a little bit earlier about this is not just a political issue. There were people who were very conservative, who allowed water barrels and food stations on their property because they didn't want people to die unnecessarily or needlessly. There, on the other side, there were people who were more progressive or more liberal who didn't want anything to do with that on their property. So you can see that it's more complex than just right, left. We went to Nogales on Thursday, and while we were there, we went to a facility that had been built for women and children who were trying to legally enter the United States. It provided a place for them to be while they went through the immigration process. It used to be full. It's about half full now because there really isn't a way it's very difficult to get asylum in the U.S. at this point in time. It was great. I mean, they got a school. They've had people who've been here over a year waiting for their opportunity to meet with people in the United States in order to try to enter legally. I think there's one woman who was there who thought she wanted to join family members. She stopped, and she was pregnant at the time, and her child was born here. But we saw it was a very interesting place to be, and this is on Nogales. This is in the Mexican side of Nogales. We spent some. Did I take that out? I guess I did. There was another place we visited there where they made artificial limbs. A lot of people, it's not uncommon for people to ride trains in order to come up from Central and South America. And people fall off the trains or get pushed off the trains and they lose limbs. And there's a group in Nogales who has dedicated themselves to making artificial limbs for people who have lost their limbs due to during incident or accident. They also hire people who they've provided services to in order to provide them an opportunity to develop skills. On Thursday, was it Thursday afternoon that we did this? I'm trying to think. No, this was Friday, because we spent all day in Nogales. Nogales was fun. Nogales was like it used to be in the United States. Remember back in the day when we used to just go across the border and, go to Canada for the day? And well, Nogales was the same way. People talked about in the same way many, many years ago. Just they'd go down to Nogales for the day. And things are much more, let's see if I got back. This is, if you can see, if you can see here or see here, the fencing in Nogales now. We also talk to people who provide support for individuals who are in detention centers. In Eloy, detention center is north of Tucson. It's where individuals who are detained find themselves. They can be there for a couple of weeks to a couple of months. There are people who have been in detention for over a year, just waiting to have their cases adjudicated or to have them moved to some place. Pay a lot of money for these. This one is privately owned. It's a private corrections company owns this particular detention center, but many of them are currently being owned by one of two private corrections organizations who have grown substantially in the last 2 to 3 years. Here, I just point out, at this point, there is no real easy legal way to get asylum in the U.S. That has pretty much been shut down. There are always opportunities to plead your case, but they're very, very constricted. Whoops. No, we're getting close to the end. Good. That's right, Charles. These are agencies. We talked to an immigration lawyer who was very disappointed with how the U.S. is handling immigration law at this point in time. He said, churches can be supportive, and they should be supportive. They should be able to offer support and services and help and assistance to individuals, recognizing that we're not immigration lawyers, we're not attorneys, we're not experts in immigration law, but that we should be able to we should see that as a ministry that we are involved in. These are all kinds of agencies that are involved in immigration at this point in time. And you can see there are, we think of immigration, when I think of immigration, or before I went there, I thought of immigration primarily as Border Patrol and ICE. And there are numerous agencies that have numerous rules and regulations that can ensnare individuals who are here trying to come ostensibly the right way. We have DMV. Why would we grant licenses? So we know that the people who are on the road know the basic rules of the road. I got down here corrections. I was working at Attica during the time that the Cuban boat lift, the Marianos boat lift, happened in the early 90s. So I remember that we saw a lot of people from that boat lift who were here. So there are bans. So if you come here and you have an unauthorized, unlawful period that you're in this country, if you leave, you can be banned from legal reentry. So if you were here, maybe you came here, you successfully got across the border, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You set up a life for yourself. Maybe you got a good job, or you have a little company, or you're here. You're making your way as anyone else. If you leave the country and you come back, there's no way for you to legally come back, and you can be barred from entry in any event. So if you are here for if you're here for more than 180 days, but less than 1 year, if you leave and try to come back, you can be barred for up to 3 years. If it's over a year, you can be barred for up to 10 years. So why would you ever try to leave? Even if you were trying to leave to do it legally, or to use the appropriate, I don't like legal, but use the appropriate methodology to change your status. If you're deported and you try to come back, you could be up to 20 years that you could be barred from legally reentering the United States. Even though you have a family over there, you have a business over there, all of that. If you want to read, you want to do a little reading on the subject of undocumented immigration in the United States. These are two books that I recommend. Dora is about a woman who came here, I want to say 40 years ago. She was from El Salvador. She was, if you remember back in the early 80s, they had all that upheaval. She was politically oriented, and she got marked by the government, maybe even to be killed. She left, and this is her ordeal. The first 2/3 of the book are really about her experiences trying to get across the border. The other book, The Devil's Highway, that's a book that looks at it's an actual story that took place maybe 15, 20 years ago, not far from Tucson, in the Tucson desert area. 26 guys went into the desert, and the thing I like about The Devil's Highway, it talks about why they did it. Why did they come? Why did they take the risk? Who were these individuals? Because who were these individuals? So an individual followed them through. So 26 guys went into the desert, 3 coyotes or 3 individuals who were leading them through, and 23 individuals who were trying to get to the United States, mostly trying to earn some money for things that were happening back home, housing, schools, that kind of stuff. 26 people went in, 14 came out. I shouldn't say came out, 14 were rescued days later. And this talks about that experience from the eyes of the people who actually survived. Dora, you can read in 2 days. It's maybe 150 pages. This one made much more of an impact. This Devil's Highway, they talk about what happens during dehydration, how people experience that? What is the physical experience of dehydration? They talked about the being lost and not knowing if they're ever going to be found. So I recommend that one highly. We've kind of come to the end of what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to be out here, so if you want to ask me some more questions about my experience, it looks like for me, I'm going to stay involved in the immigration justice task force, immigration justice work for Upper New York. The task force is about ready to be disbanded and folded into the Conference Commission on Race and Religion and Race. I can never get them to keep them straight, but we're going to take up that mantle, and we're going to continue working in that area or I will continue working in that area here in our conference. I would love to go back to Tucson and work with either the Samaritans or No More Deaths. That kind of work I think is vital. They have lots of people apparently. I won't say lots, but they have enough people in the winter because they have snowbirds in Tucson, Arizona that go there. But during the summer months, those people tend to leave. I can't imagine why when it's 105, but maybe it's me. But they have a significant need for individuals who would be willing to do that work in the summer. So I think that's it for me. We'll sing ourselves out, and I have a little prayer.